All right, MrSotko here, and welcome back to another Company Heroes 2 replay cast. And today it is a 1 vs 1 on Samaski Winner, and we will check out our players. Over on the right side, we have our blue Russian player, Spartak, and on the left side, our red Wehrmacht player, Maschinengewehr. Well, let's check out the map. We have our victory point up north and our munitions point. Victory point in the south and the munitions point down here as well. And we have the victory point in the center, as well as a fuel point and the fuel point above here as well. So sort of an even map, about equal for each player to take the munitions and fuel. And we'll see what our players are building here. We have conscripts coming out for the blue Russian player, and our engineers heading right to the very first territory point. We have an MG42 and grenadiers. Very, very typical opening for Wehrmacht. Moving on out, we have our engineers also taking the very first territory point as well. And conscripts are heading down this way and going right into town. Probably going to take this very first territory point. And another thing you can kind of do on this map is Samaski Winner, so you can actually go right across the river in this map. However, if you bring armor across and it gets hit by an artillery shell, a mortar, something like that, it can't sink your tank, so you have to watch out for that sort of thing. But in the summer version of this map, you can put a machine gun right about here. Typically, if you're OKW, bring a Kubel wagon right here if you're on the right side of the map. And you can have it set up right here. And then that way, your enemy player really can't get through there. And it's actually sort of a very good strategy. They have to go down until they can find a way to take care of that by using a machine gun or something like that. Now the MG42 and the Grenadiers moving towards the center of town. And our conscripts did take the territory point right there and are now moving, looks like they're moving towards the fuel point here. However, there are some engineers moving to the fuel point as well. However, these conscripts got inside of this building and will have superior cover against these engineers. So these engineers will lose out very quickly to that. Grenadiers now moving towards the Russian side here. And the engineers are going to be taking this fuel point here. However, these Grenadiers are moving right to the fuel point as well. So we'll see how that turns out. And these engineers just blasting away at this house, but not really going to be doing too much good, as they do have submachine guns. Should be moving those engineers closer if you want to battle this out, where they will do a little bit more damage. MG42 has been set up inside of the church and is now facing this way for excellent coverage of the center victory point. Now chasing away those engineers, the conscripts have exited the house. However, the engineers came right back, and so the conscripts are going to be taking this fuel point instead. MG for the Russian player is now entering the building, going to seek cover inside there and trying to suppress these engineers. And up top, the Grenadiers have successfully chased away the engineers that were up here. And there was a dying Grenadier there, and taking the fuel point away from the Russians. Now chasing away these engineers, going back home, but they're going to take this fuel point here for the Russians. So now one army will have one fuel point, and the other one will have the other.
Your orders, comrade.
So with this MG42 in the center, it's going to be very hard to take this victory point at the moment because of that MG42, and it's going to be hard to get in there. You're going to have to use some Molotovs or something like that to be able to get that MG out of there. We have a mortar coming out for the Wehrmacht, 3 Grenadiers, engineers, and an MG42. Whereas the Russian has 3 conscripts about to come out there, and MG and engineers for the Russian player. Now conscripts coming down here are going to take this victory point and the munitions point. However, the German players taking the territory point right in front of the Russian base, so cutting off all kinds of resources there. And a bold move going all the way up front there. However, these engineers figure that out, and they're going to come over here and try and stop this. Grenadiers now taking this territory point in the center here, and so far nobody is taking the victory point in the center. The Russians now have 1 of the victory points, so starting to chip away at the German score there, just because they're the only ones that have the victory point so far. Engineers behind a decent amount of cover here compared to these Grenadiers. However, the Grenadiers are superior troops, so it just about evens out. Losing out on Grenadiers here, now 2 Grenadiers to lose 3 engineers. Now conscripts over here battling out with these Grenadiers. I don't think these conscripts are going to last, as they're very, very low health. However, they are 1-star veteran. We're going to try and take that territory point down there, but unable to do that. Going to have to run all the way back to base, and hopefully they don't run past any Grenadiers and lose those. Now conscripts taking this territory point while these Grenadiers are now running away, and these Engineers are actually trying to chase it, trying to get an extra kill there, but not going to happen. Grenadiers now taking the center point. And now mortars raining down on this building here where the MG is and actually losing soldiers as it hits. And we have a flamethrower for these engineers, and they're right up on this building. So both flamethrowers and mortars raining down on this building here. So taking out this MG crew very, very quickly. And a mortar landed directly on that MG crew. Did huge damage. Only one man left. So got to get out of there in a quick hurry. Conscripts moving towards the center. Maybe going after these grenadiers here. So going to want to get inside this house maybe and battle these grenadiers that way. However, this MG may be able to reach that house. Nope, just out of range. At least facing that way it is. The mortar is set up all the way over here and can reach these conscripts over here. But a miss there as the conscripts were moving. Conscripts now moving towards the center here. Could get a good flank on these grenadiers here if they choose to. Could come around here on the side of that house as they are faced towards these conscripts, and well, their back is completely open. These conscripts getting immediately suppressed by that MG right here in the middle. Now building a fuel cache over there on the territory point directly in front of their base. The safest place to build a fuel cache. These conscripts in some trouble here. Down to 2 conscripts. And these conscripts also running away from the suppression of that MG there. So the mortars raining down on that building caused some pretty good damage, as well as the grenadiers firing into it as well. Grenadiers now going to take this fuel point here as the Germans need the fuel so badly. Hungry, hungry Germans. Now the engineers are moving out, putting a little bit of mines up here, anticipating for the later game, just in case any tanks roll along there. They're going to feel the wrath of the TM-35 mine.
Your predecessor died a hero.
Now moving back, just healing up, has the medics at base here, so healing up all his conscripts so they will be full health by the time they get back.
You need something demolished?
So now the conscripts moving up to the top corner here. It looks like they're going to place another fuel cache, potentially, up at the top. And Grenadiers now taking some of the Russian territory here, starting to push out. And it looks like the Germans have a little bit more territory so far than the Russians now that they're taking this and this spot here. So they're going to have a little bit more income for the German player than the Russians. Conscripts now inside of this building, garrisoned in here. But this mortar can just turn around and start firing at this building here. Looked like a rifle grenade actually hit that building, but didn't take out any conscripts there. Down to 5 conscripts. And 1 grenadier falls down as well. 2 groups of conscripts now moving in. It looks like they're going to back up this area here. These conscripts are down to just 3 men, so they're sort of in trouble here. Going to throw a Molotov cocktail on these grenadiers here, see how that works out. And doesn't do too much. They get out of it just in time. Possibly did a little bit of damage, but not as much as Spartak wanted it to do. Still unable to take the center victory point because of that MG in that church. Now retreating all these grenadiers here to these 2 squads. So those are going to take a little bit of time to come back. Engineers battling out with grenadiers here, but they have a flamethrower. And it looks like a rifle grenade hit there. Conscripts battling out with engineers with a flamethrower. And I don't think these conscripts are going to last too long. But the engineers are also going to take pretty good damage. Going to throw a Molotov cocktail, fighting fire with fire here. And going to retreat those. And retreating on this side as well. So down to 2 men each. So losses on both sides there. Engineers now up at this top victory point here. Also placing some mines right there. Which is a pretty good place in case any armor comes up along through there. Mortar still in the center, not really doing too much as it's facing one particular direction. Really isn't firing at these troops down here. Half-track out for the Wehrmacht with Grenadiers with an LMG in it. So doing pretty good damage to these conscripts here. The conscripts do not have anti-tank grenades, so not going to really be able to effectively deal with this half-track. They're going to take quite a bit of losses before they actually take it down. The MG is firing on this half-track, but it is very far away, so only some of the bullets are actually hitting it. Shock troops now moving forward. I'd like to see those shock troops move up into town rather than come after this half-track here. However, that MG inside of that church is a big nuisance for the Russian player. But with shock troops, you can just throw a smoke grenade out, a preemptive smoke grenade, and that'll allow you to get very close to an MG. And then you can actually throw a real grenade into the church. And these shock troops are in thick snow here, being slowed down dramatically there, so having a hard time there. Grenadiers, engineers taking this fuel point here up top.
One of our machine guns has been silenced.
And the MG was lost to this half-track, and this half-track is just sort of tooling around here and doing very good against this Russian army here. However, now the shock troops are right on board with it and doing big damage with the submachine guns up close, but now the half-track is going to get away as it's just much, much faster. Conscripts now coming into the center of town here. Still got to watch out for this MG. That's going to be a big problem for him to take care of. He needs to get a mortar and could rain down a mortar on that at the very least, and that would be the safest approach to that. Or again, bring up his shock troops, and he could bring them right about here. Throw a smoke grenade here, which would allow him to get into that smoke, and then throw a grenade into that church. Here come the shock troops and conscripts battling out with this half-track here. Lots of damage on that half-track. Lots of damage on the conscripts, too. A mortar came raining down. Took out about 3 or 4 of those. Now shock troops moving towards these grenadiers here. And these grenadiers are in trouble. Got to move back there. Those submachine guns on the shock troops do big, big damage. However, lots of firepower coming to these shock troops. Going to have to get out of there immediately. Throws a grenade, lands on those grenadiers. I think he was actually throwing it at the half-track. However, it landed on those grenadiers and did huge damage. Took out the entire squad with one grenade. That's a huge loss and a very, very unlucky loss for the Wehrmacht. And the mortar so far with 6 kills, so not doing too bad. Now repairing up the half-track. So all the work done engaging that half-track is going to be negated by the repairing of that half-track with the engineers there. Grenadiers now taking back the fuel point from the Russians. And need to take this fuel point too if they really want to stay in the game and have a lot of armor at the end. Just send some troops up there to take that as well. Grenadiers taking this northern victory point, and that will leave the Wehrmacht with 2 victory points. So it will actually be the first time they turn the score around on the Russian player, as he has 500, and the score for the Wehrmacht is 438. Looks like he launched a rifle grenade there from the sound of it. I didn't actually see it, but I heard the sound of a rifle grenade. It looks like he launched it right in that building, which destroyed the building. But I didn't see any troops inside of that building. So either he did that for fun, or he thought that some troops were inside of there, or they just moved out just in time. Not really sure. Didn't get to catch that one. Conscripts now inside this building here. However, there's a flamethrower directly in front of them, so that's not going to work out too well for these conscripts here. They're going to get burned out pretty quick. Should just exit immediately here. Shouldn't even bother with this. And also a mortar raining down, so flamethrower and a mortar raining down. It took out those conscripts in a very quick hurry. 3 conscripts for the Russian player, an MG, and he has shock troops as well. And plenty of troops for the Wehrmacht player. 4 grenadiers, engineers, MG42, a mortar, and he also is bringing out a Pak 40, and also, of course, that half-track as well. I'll take in this territory point here, and maybe moving forward, too, with that, as he also has engineers down here. More conscripts inside this building. Didn't really learn his lesson from last time, as mortars are just going to rain down on that, and that'll kill him off very quickly. Shock troops also moving down towards these grenadiers here. Should be able to take out those grenadiers if used right. Should throw smoke. Always throw smoke first and then move in to your opponent with shock troops, as smoke is very, very, very good in company heroes too. Grenadiers forcing those engineers away. They tried to take that center victory point, but just not going to happen with that MG in the center there. And see, these shock troops had a very hard time. They were running through thick snow all the way to these grenadiers, and these grenadiers, all they had to do is just back up and fire. So that's a big issue for the Russian player, is this heavy snow here, which is slowing him down, just allowing lots of shots to get on him. Now T-70 out for the Russian player. T-70 heading directly for this half-track, and gets one shot off on it. Looks like he did a little bit of damage, a little bit more damage there. Now, conscripts coming around the back end, but they still do not have anti-tank grenades, so not really going to be able to effectively deal with that half-track. Although it has been decrewed, and no longer can really defend itself. So engineers now, conscripts, excuse me, just so tongue-tied. Grenadiers were moving forward towards that T-70. Looked like they were going to Panzerfaust it, but didn't get the opportunity to do so. Mortar's still raining down on these conscripts here, and if these conscripts do not move, they're going to take another hit. They're losing another man. Grenadiers now taking the fuel point up top here. However, at the same time, these Grenadiers are taking this southern fuel point, but may not be able to take it if they take another hit from that mortar. Pak 40 in the center, and it looks like incendiary barrage on this Pak-40, and he did not notice this at all. So now he's just burning away, and it actually hit the church too. So a very, very good incendiary barrage on the MG, the mortars, and the Pak-40. So taking lots of lives there. The mortar was lost, and the church is now completely on fire, and it will be destroyed eventually as it cannot be put out. Conscripts battling out with this MG here. However, they're going to get suppressed. Going to bring that T-70 around. Need to just bring it around here. Can't really bring it through the concrete barrier because it is such a light, tiny tank. And retreating that MG. So now allowing the Russian player to take that center victory point. Now forcing his way onto this field point here. Just Grenadiers able to defend this, and not going to be able to defend it for too long as they were suppressed, and there are shock troops coming at them as well. And this T-70 is battling out with some troops here. Gets hit by a Panzerfaust, damages the engine. Now going to have to bring it out of there and repair that back up. Did cost the Germans a little bit of munitions to actually use that. Pak-40 also set up. Looks like it got hit by a Pak-40. Luckily, it did not get destroyed for Spartak. Unluckily for Maschinengewehr. And so now a very, very damaged T-70 is going to get repaired up by these engineers here. I'd like to think anyway. Yep, indeed. Going there now. Now conscripts moving, or excuse me, shock troops are moving out. And we'll see what they can do from here. Half-track now loaded up with another group of grenadiers. Now bringing that Pak-40 back to base so he can reinforce that crew. Conscripts taking the southern point here. So now the Russians are going to own the whole southern end here, as well as the center victory point. So now it's still bringing down the Wehrmacht, 426 to 451.
We are ready for anything.
Shock troops going to take this territory point and could easily move up this way and take that victory point as well after that.
This now belongs to the people and workers.
Half-track now moving forward at these Grenadiers, and these Grenadiers really don't have an answer for this. They're just going to lose out very quickly here, as they still don't have those anti-tank grenades, and going to run back to base as they really can't do anything about that. Now going to take this with these Grenadiers inside of this half-track, and just going to take that territory point right back from the Russians. Indeed, now moving his shock troops up here, going to take this victory point from the Germans. And again, with shock troops, just remember they can throw smoke grenades. It only costs 15 munitions. So if there was an MG in this church, you can bring up some shock troops, throw a smoke grenade, put a smoke grenade here or here, and then run through that smoke and into that smoke, and the MG cannot fire on you. And then you can throw your grenade, because the grenade throw from the shock troops is actually very far ranged. Battling out with these Grenadiers here. These conscripts are going to be taking this territory point. However, these conscripts are going to be in good cover here. Actually, minor cover there. However, these Grenadiers really aren't going to make it. They do have an LMG and going to do some damage to the conscripts, but they're not going to last too long here. Got to retreat those conscripts. Lost that conscript. It was a very unlucky hit for Spartak with that Ostwind there, as it took out 2 men in one shot. Now an Ostwind out for the Wehrmacht, and this is going to be a problem for Spartak, as he's going to have to deal with it with this T-70, but he has this Su-76 now, and as soon as the Su-76 is going to hit it in the back armor here, going to hit this Ostwind in the back armor, doing big damage, and this T-70 is taking big damage too. However, the Wehrmacht GG's out, leaving Spartak the winner, and Spartak simply took over way too many of these victory points for the German to handle, and I think the German should have lasted a little longer. I think he should have stayed in the battle, but decided to leave, and he does have 2 Pak-40s out on the map, which I don't know why he left, because he could have taken care of this Su-76 and this T-70 eventually with those Pak-40s, but a GG out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this replay, and I will see you guys next time.